Welcome back to Golf Today. Now, our friend and senior writer for Golfweek, Beth Nichols, sent out this tweet last night teasing an upcoming project. And with Beth, when she speaks, we listen, put it that way. So right now, we welcome in the woman of the hour, Beth. We have all read the article now here at Golf Channel. I know you released it this morning. It is absolutely fascinating what you've been diving into, what you've been exploring. Tell the audience at home exactly what you've been doing and what you've discovered.
Yeah, so the crux of the article basically is asking the question, do women have scoring clubs in their hands as often as men? Are they able to take on par fives and two? Are there as many drivable par fours? And the answer is no, unequivocally, top to bottom. This isn't just on the LPGA, but looking all the way down the ranks through college golf and casual, amateur women that are playing golf courses that are too long, or just in some cases playing holes, trying to hit a 6-iron into a green that was designed to receive a wedge, and so they can't stop it close enough to the hole, or a reachable par 5 that's not really reachable for the majority of the field on the LPGA, and so they end up laying up with an iron to hit a wedge in. And the idea that if we could change that, if we could make some tweaks in course setup, how much more exciting and entertaining the LPGA product would be overall, and then how many more women are likely to stay involved in the game because they can actually score, they can actually hit greens in regulation.
Because it is those scoring opportunities and it is those risk-reward holes that we see on the PGA Tour that do create so much excitement. I mean, the entertainment value is absolutely there, as you mentioned. I mean, why do you think the value in course setup and the immediate impact it could have on the entertainment value has gone sort of relatively unaddressed up until this point?
Well, I can tell you that players write about it on their surveys all the time. So it's certainly not something that the players don't talk about. I think in many cases it's a lack of statistics, it's a lack of numbers. It's hard to know what's going on in the women's game because there's no shot link, right? But I asked the officials and they said, we set up our average par 5 for reachable to be 480 yards. Well, if the average LPGA player is hitting at 250 yards off the tee, they're ripping a 3-wood trying to reach a par 5 and 2. And they would rather see Ann Van Dam, the longest player on the LPGA arguably, rip a drive, be rewarded and hit a 7-iron in, and then let your average player attack with a hybrid, because that average hitter is saying, average hitter, I should say, not player, is saying, my hybrid can match your 7-iron, let's go.
Hi, Beth Ann. Hi, me. Back in the old days when I was, and you guys weren't alive, but 70s and 80s, for example, it was very routine for, first of all, most players not to be able to reach par 5s on the PGA Tour. And those that did often hit woods. There were very few irons hit, and that's why Jack Nicklaus kind of distinguished himself by being able to hit 1-irons and 2-irons into par 5s. Your story is fascinating and well done. But I wonder if our mentality's changed now where we feel somehow hitting a 2-iron into a par 5 is not giving someone a scoring opportunity. Do you think perhaps the game is, getting to the point where we're expecting, the par 5s to play so easy, even on the men's game, and that the women actually played in a way that's more equivalent to the way it's been played in the past? Is this actually something that you think, retards excitement, so to speak?
I think that's certainly a fair question. In many ways, perhaps the women are hitting all their clubs in the bag more in some cases. But I would say that for your average fan tuning in, they don't understand why they're seeing a woman lay up with a 9-iron on a par 5 so that she can get to a yardage to then hit her wedge. And that's not really that entertaining. And I think, for fans sitting at home, they want to see birdies and eagles. Players want that excitement too. And so, it's frustrating for LPGA players to sit at home and watch PGA Tour players play the game so differently than what they're presented. And it's not just the par 5s and the drivable par 4s. It does come down to, and this is in college golf as well, that females are hitting clubs into greens that aren't designed to receive a 6-iron. But there's this idea that they have to play from a certain yardage. And so I don't see what's wrong with pushing the tee up so that if a green is meant to receive a wedge, that the female player has a wedge in her hand, whether she's playing Division III golf or whether she's playing the LPGA. that should hold true for all levels of the game.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I know that's something that Brandel Chambly sort of echoes in your feature as well. But, you know, in my opinion and most people's opinion, golf is golf. The women's game and the men's game, they are the same game, the same rules. But the sad reality is, Beth Ann, is that there's still sometimes that is not the universal opinion, especially in this era absolutely obsessed by power. Do you think there is a kind of stigma that you've sort of touched on there in the concept of shortening courses for the women's game?
Yeah, I think when your casual viewer tunes in and sees a female hitting, you know, a hybrid or a 7-wood into a par 3, or sees them with a hybrid or a 7-wood into a par 4, their first impression is, you know, wow, they don't hit it very far, you know, and because they don't see that over on the PGA Tour that often, you know, and I think that hurts the women's game. You know, these women are longer and stronger and more talented than ever. The tour has never been this deep. This is the 20th anniversary of Annika's 59, and there hasn't been one since. And, you know, when Jessica Korda shot 60 earlier in the season, it was the first 60 on the LPGA since 2008. And I asked myself, why? You know, I mean, I'm watching the Waste Management, and they're saying going into the weekend, you know, I expect to see a lot of 61s and 62s. And I'm like, when has that ever been said going into the weekend of an LPGA broadcast? And why is that, you know? And so Laura Davies said to me, she's like, I've been preaching this reachable par 5 thing for years and years. And she says, nothing slows down a good round faster than getting to a par 5 that you can't reach into. So, you know, nobody wants every par 5 to be reachable. We don't want this to be a pitch and putt. But I think it's fair to say, you know, that set the women up to light it up every once in a while. You know, why does an LPGA major championship have to be 6,800 yards? 6,700 yards. There are other ways to make a course difficult than just lengthen it.
Yeah, Beth Ann, it is a fascinating subject to shine a light on. Lots of layers to it and lots of work to be done. I truly do urge people to go over and read your article on Golfweek. Thank you so much for putting in so much hard work and time into it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, let's bring back in our LPGA Tour pro, Paige McKenzie. Speaking on behalf of the players, it sounds like, you know, a lot of them are singing from the same hymn sheet here. What's your opinion on this point?
You know, if you are to compare LPGA Tour setup to PGA Tour setup, there's some noticeable differences. And I think Beth Ann hit on the fact that as a player watching the men's game, you do envy the ability to be able to go out there and score. And when you look at the greens and regulation for the LPGA Tour and PGA Tour, I think a lot of people would be surprised to know, even though the LPGA Tour is playing relatively longer golf courses, they're actually at the very top end hitting more greens. So they're giving themselves more birdie opportunities, but in fact, making less birdies, almost a half a shot less birdies at the top end on average than the PGA Tour. And what that is telling me is they're not getting the gimme birdies. You know, we saw Justin Thomas hit over the green on the 12th hole last week with a 3-wood. That almost never happens on the LPGA Tour, that you would have a drivable par 4, let alone one that you could hit with a 3-wood. It's very rare on the tour. And I think that's where Beth Ann is suggesting that the entertainment value might be greater when you get a chance to do that. But I think she also raised a great question, and I'd be curious to know both you and Jaime's opinion on this. In the article, she raised the question, why can't low scoring in women's game be celebrated rather than questioned? And I think that's a fundamental question that the viewers and fans of this game need to ask themselves, is if the women go out and they hit these shots, are you going to say that they're really good, or are you going to say that the course is too easy? And I think there's that dichotomy within women's sports, or that question within women's sports, that makes it more challenging to address than within men's sports.
Well, I think right now that question is being asked more about men's sports than the women's game, in golf at least. I think the women's game is one that's probably, at least in terms of the number of clubs used, as Beth Ann referenced, is more balanced. But I would agree with you that I think going, you know, risk-reward par 5s are some of the most exciting holes in the game, and I'd like to see more of those in the women's game. I do think because they don't carry the ball as high, it's more difficult to go for par 5s sometimes. And so it's just the nature of the style of play and the physical limitations. But I really think the pro game on the LPGA Tour is in a very good place, and I certainly don't question when they shoot low scores that they earned it, and that was not easy golf. And by shorting some par 5s, I don't think there'll be any stigma attached at all. I see both sides of this. I don't want to see the integrity or the challenge cheapened in any way. And I think right now the LPGA just needs, if anything, micro changes, not dramatic ones.
Yeah, low scores do make excitement, though. I mean, as Beth Ann mentions, when you get more people tuning into a golf tournament when you're on 59 watch, she raises some really interesting questions about the LPGA and about golf across the board. So do go and check it out, Beth Ann Nichols' article over on Golfweek.